Have you ever witnessed a moment when fate seemed to turn against an innocent person, revealing cracks in the very foundation of trust we hold for the law? In this gripping tale, we follow the harrowing ordeal of an ordinary black man wrongfully accused by a relentless police officer determined to close a case no matter the cost. As suspicion deepens and twists unfold, everything rests upon one courageous confession that will turn the entire investigation on its head. Prepare yourself for an emotional roller coaster where justice fights to prevail, secrets refuse to stay buried, and karma delivers its own brand of retribution. The air was still that Sunday morning, humidity wrapping around the streets of downtown Philadelphia like a heavy blanket. Morning rays danced across old brick buildings, while church bells chimed in the distance. Ezekiel "Zeke" Miller, a 29-year-old electrician's apprentice, stepped out of his modest one-bedroom apartment in West Philly. His shift at the Tesla service center didn't start until noon, but he liked to take a stroll early in the morning to clear his head. Wearing a faded Eagles t-shirt and well-worn jeans, he walked with his headphones on, listening to an old Motown tune that reminded him of family gatherings back home in North Carolina. As he neared a Starbucks, Zeke paused to check the time on his phone. He had a text from his boss asking for a small favor at work. Zeke tapped a quick reply, letting him know he'd handle it. Suddenly, from a patrol car parked across the street, an officer's sharp gaze locked onto him. That officer was Sergeant Harold Connolly, a man known around these parts for his aggressive style of policing. Connolly had a reputation for coming down hard on anyone he deemed suspicious, and his approach frequently skirted the line between lawful and overbearing. Sergeant Connolly was behind the wheel, sipping black coffee from a foam cup. He had been scanning the morning crowds for any sign of trouble when he noticed Zeke walking alone. Something about the young black man's posture or attire, perhaps just pure prejudice, made Connolly's senses tingle. There was no sign of a crime in progress, no outward reason to pursue him. But suspicion needed little fuel in Connolly's world. Zeke, unaware he was being watched, rubbed his eyes and yawned. He considered going into Starbucks for a quick espresso. A part of him hesitated. He was trying to save every dollar to send home to his mother, who'd been dealing with medical bills. Instead, he decided to keep walking and turn onto a quieter street. But the second he crossed the intersection, the patrol car pulled forward. Connolly wanted a better look. Zeke continued on his path, not noticing that Connolly had parked again a block away. He had just passed a small local pharmacy when he realized someone was calling after him. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" The voice was deep and commanding, reverberating against the walls of a nearby bakery that had just opened. Zeke's heart rate spiked as he turned to see an officer staring him down, hand hovering near his gun. "Is there a problem, officer?" Zeke asked politely, though his voice trembled. "ID?" Connolly demanded curtly. "Need to see your ID." Zeke fumbled for his wallet, hands shaking from the sudden tension. He wasn't used to this kind of confrontation and had done nothing wrong. "My name is Ezekiel Miller," he said, voice still polite but tinged with apprehension. He handed over his driver's license. Connolly studied it closely, his brow furrowed as though searching for any inconsistency, any reason to escalate. "What are you doing around here at this hour?" the officer finally asked, folding his arms with the license still in hand. "Just walking, sir. I live a few blocks down." "I like to, really," Connolly cut him off. "Funny you're on this street. The pharmacy behind you, someone just tried to break in last night, and you're lurking around it first thing in the morning." Zeke glanced at the locked doors of the pharmacy. They looked perfectly intact. "I had no idea," he said, his voice tense. "I'm just on my way to the Tesla Center." "You can call them, they know me." Connolly narrowed his eyes. "I'll make that call if I see fit. For now, you stay put. We had a witness see a figure messing around here late last night." You fit the description. Zeke felt fear creeping into his chest, not because he was guilty, but because he recognized the danger of being pegged as a suspect for no good reason. He'd heard stories from friends and news reports about how quickly things could escalate when a black man was wrongly accused by the police. "But officer, I wasn't anywhere near here last night. I work evenings sometimes. Yesterday I was quiet," Connolly ordered. "We'll see about that." "Don't try anything." Zeke stood by helplessly as Connolly radioed in for backup. People walking by cast curious glances. An older woman slowed, her expression somewhere between pity and dread, while a young couple with a toddler hastened their steps, wanting no part of the scene. A swirl of shame and indignation washed over Zeke, but there was little he could do. Backup arrived quickly. A second patrol car manned by Officer Miriam Rodriguez, who had partnered with Connolly a few times in the past. She knew his track record, and though she respected his rank, she was wary of his methods. Connolly showed her Zeke's ID. "We've got ourselves a suspect," he announced, voice full of certainty. Officer Rodriguez looked at Zeke's ID. "Is there any evidence tying him to the break-in?" she asked quietly, not wanting to challenge Connolly in front of a civilian. "Working on it," Connolly said. "Dismissive. Let's detain him for questioning. Let's see if the pharmacy owner has cameras." Zeke swallowed hard. "I'm telling you, I didn't do anything." Rodriguez sighed, sensing the tension. She gestured for Zeke to walk to her patrol car, away from Connolly's intensifying glare. As she patted him down, searching for any illegal items or stolen goods, she found nothing but Zeke's phone and a few dollars in cash. The real reason for the break-in the night before had nothing to do with Zeke. In fact, the store's security cameras had likely captured a slender figure wearing a grey hoodie and scuffed boots. But Connolly, fueled by his suspicion, had other ideas. A break-in on his watch was unacceptable, and he was eager to pin it on someone. Even as Zeke insisted he had no reason to rob or vandalize the pharmacy, Connolly could only see a prime suspect, a young black man in a location that seemed, to him, out of place. Like so many times before, Connolly failed to heed even the basics of detective work. Within half an hour, Zeke found himself seated in a cramped interrogation room at the local Philadelphia Police Department. The white fluorescent lights were harsh, reflecting off the scuffed metal table at which he sat. Officer Rodriguez watched from behind a one-way mirror, her face etched with concern. Connolly strode into the room, a file in hand. He slammed it onto the table, rattling Zeke's nerves. "You better start talking, Miller," he barked, leaning in. "The pharmacies had thousands of dollars in medicine stolen over the last few months. Witness accounts. Suspicious circumstances. Don't waste my time." Zeke swallowed. "I was asleep last night after a late shift," he said, careful to keep his voice steady. "If you check with Tesla, they'll confirm my schedule. I left around 9, got home by 10, watched TV, went to bed." Connolly made a dismissive sound. "Sure, that's what they all say. Could have snuck out after. Give me something better." Zeke felt his composure slipping. "Why would I risk everything for a few bottles of pills? I've never been in trouble with the law a day in my life. You can check my record." "Already did," Connolly lied. He had done no such thing. "So far, all I know is that you happen to live near this pharmacy. You show up at a suspicious time. You have no alibi for the late hours. Nobody saw you in your apartment, right?" Zeke felt trapped, but he tried to remain calm. "I live alone. I don't have a roommate to confirm, but my shift manager can attest I was at work until 9. Then I left. That's all I can say." Connolly jotted down notes, the pen scratching the paper ominously. He rose from the chair and walked out, leaving Zeke alone. Moments later, Officer Rodriguez entered the room, her tone gentler. "I just want you to know, if you're innocent, the truth will come out. Tears welled up in Zeke's eyes, a mix of rage and frustration. I am innocent. This is insane. But all she could offer him was a weak smile and a glass of water. Her gaze said everything. She was unsure how to override Connolly's iron will. While Zeke was held for further questioning, Sergeant Connolly revisited the pharmacy. The owner, Mr. Ahmed, was still rattled from the recent series of break-ins. Connolly demanded to see the security footage, which was unfortunately riddled with glitches. The cameras were old, the feed grainy and partially obscured by static. Through the flickers, a figure could be seen hurrying in the back alley. It could have been anyone. Nevertheless, Connolly took a few grainy screenshots, determined to match them to Zeke somehow. Looks like the suspect is about the same build, same height, he remarked triumphantly, ignoring Mr. Ahmed's protest that the footage was inconclusive. Mr. Ahmed was no fool. He knew Connolly's reputation. Officer, with all due respect, you can't even see the person's face. And that figure appears to have a limp or something. Are you sure we have a suspect in custody? Connolly cut him off, voice brimming with confidence. That's enough for now. But what Connolly didn't realize was that Mr. Ahmed had installed a second hidden camera near the back entrance, one that fed directly to a separate recording system. Mr. Ahmed had not yet reviewed that footage, and Connolly's dismissive attitude made him hesitant to share it immediately. Mr. Ahmed decided he would take a careful look himself before sending it over. Meanwhile, Zeke's life was turning upside down. He was released later that day on the condition that he remain available for further questioning. No formal charges had been filed yet, but Connolly was building a case, and Zeke could sense it looming like a dark storm cloud. In the Tesla break room the next day, he barely touched his lunch. His co-worker Jennifer asked him what was wrong, and he confided in her about his frightening experience. Have they actually charged you, though? Jennifer asked gently. Not yet, but Connolly keeps calling me in for more questions, Zeke said, his voice trembling. He acts like it's just a matter of time before he nails me. Jennifer shook her head. That's harassment. You need a lawyer. But lawyers cost money, and Zeke didn't have enough to cover his mother's hospital bills and an attorney. His boss, whom he also told, was alarmed enough to say, "We'll vouch for you, no problem. But please, Zeke, get professional help." Concern bled into all aspects of Zeke's life. He found it hard to concentrate on wiring tasks at work or even enjoy the small things, like playing basketball with friends. He kept imagining Connolly's face, hearing his authoritative voice repeating the same threat. We have evidence. If they insisted they had evidence, grainy footage, or a questionable eyewitness, it could ruin his life. Days dragged on, and Zeke lived in constant fear. One afternoon, after another round of questioning at the station, he ran into a familiar face, Nina Valentine, a friend from high school in North Carolina, whom he hadn't seen in years. They had attended the same after-school drama club once upon a time. Nina now lived in Philadelphia as well, working as a paralegal for a small law firm. Zeke Miller? She asked, eyes wide in recognition. The tension slid off his face for a moment as memories of their teenage years came flooding back. Nina? Wow, hey, he said, both happy to see her and exhausted from his ordeal. He caught her up on everything that had happened from the moment Connolly confronted him on the street to the near daily interrogations. Her face hardened. I know Sergeant Connolly by reputation. Zeke, I'm so sorry. This is unacceptable. Look, I'm not a lawyer, but my firm might be able to help you. We handle wrongful accusations, sometimes pro bono, if you qualify. Let me talk to my boss. Zeke exhaled in relief, as though the weight of the world had been lifted off him, even if just a little. I appreciate it, he murmured, eyes bright with the first spark of hope in days. While Nina worked her connections, Connolly was in his office, rummaging through unsolved cases. He was under significant pressure from higher-ups to solve the string of pharmacy break-ins that had plagued the area in recent months. Each theft was similar. The suspect targeted small local pharmacies with minimal security, making off with prescription painkillers, which presumably were being sold on the streets. Connolly needed results, and he needed them fast. A younger detective named Ryan Reeves approached Connolly's desk. "Sir, I've been reviewing this series of break-ins. There's a pattern suggesting multiple individuals, or at least different techniques used. Our suspect could be part of a ring." Connolly waved him away. "We have a prime suspect, Ezekiel Miller. I'm focusing on that lead." Detective Reeves shrugged. "But I talked to some folks in Zeke's neighborhood. They say he's never once been in trouble. He also has partial alibis from his workplace. Maybe we should expand our search." Connolly bristled at the suggestion. "You think I'm barking up the wrong tree, kid? I've seen this before. Nice guys who turn out to be con artists." The cameras put him near the scene. "You let me do my job." Detective Reeves held his tongue. Connolly was a veteran officer with clout, known for walking the razor's edge of police procedure. Confronting him meant inviting trouble. Nina's boss, attorney Marjorie Lansing, agreed to look at Zeke's case pro bono. Marjorie was a seasoned lawyer in her late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and an unyielding sense of justice. She met with Zeke in a small conference room at her firm. On the table, next to a neatly labeled folder, sat a steaming mug of herbal tea. "I want to understand everything," Marjorie said, offering a reassuring smile. "Leave nothing out." Zeke recounted every detail, from the early morning confrontation to the most recent interrogation. When he finished, Marjorie sighed. "And you haven't been formally charged yet?" "No, ma'am," Zeke said, "but I feel like it's coming." Marjorie nodded. Sergeant Connolly is known for pushing things to the edge, especially when he thinks he's got a slam dunk. "We'll need to gather evidence in your favor. Nina told me about the security cameras. If the pharmacy or any businesses nearby have clearer footage, we need to get a copy." Zeke glanced down at his hands. "I appreciate the help. I just don't understand why he's so determined to charge me." Marjorie's voice turned steely. "Because he's got pressure to solve this case, and you're an easy target. But if the real culprit confesses, or we find incontrovertible evidence of someone else's involvement, you'll be off the hook." She laid out a plan. They'd request all security footage from the pharmacy, from adjacent businesses, and any relevant witness statements. They'd also compile affidavits from Zeke's work colleagues verifying his shifts and character references from neighbors. A few days later, Mr. Ahmed from the pharmacy finally reviewed the hidden camera footage from that night. To his shock, the feed showed a lean figure dressed in dark clothing, limping slightly, jimmying the lock on the back door. There was a brief glimpse of the culprit's face under a streetlight, a gaunt, pale man with a frantic expression. Clearly not Zeke. "Wasting no time, Mr." Ahmed called the police station to speak directly with Sergeant Connolly, only to be told he was unavailable. Frustrated, he tried to contact Detective Reeves instead, leaving a message that he had critical evidence. Days passed with no reply. Deciding this was too important to let slip, Mr. Ahmed burned a copy of the footage onto a USB stick and personally delivered it to the station. Connolly wasn't there, but Reeves was. Reeves watched it immediately, stunned at how it exonerated Zeke. "We've got to follow this up," Reeves said, eyes wide. "Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. I'll let Sergeant Connolly know." But in a twist of fate, Connolly returned to the station late that night, rummaged through the evidence on Reeves's desk, saw the USB labeled pharmacy footage, and stashed it away without watching it fully. Perhaps in his mind it was an unimportant detail, or perhaps he was afraid it would contradict his lead suspect. Either way, Connolly left it in a drawer and never filed it properly. Days turned into weeks. Connolly escalated his efforts to pin the crime spree on Zeke, citing questionable witness sightings, the flawed security footage, and the fact that Zeke lived nearby. He insisted that the MO matched someone with local knowledge. Connolly even compiled a dossier of possible reasons why Zeke might need quick cash, pointing to his mother's hospital bills as a possible motive. Zeke's world began to crumble. His mother, worried and frail, begged him to come home to North Carolina to escape the harassment. But Zeke stood his ground. "I won't run, Ma. That makes me look guilty. My lawyer says we have to fight this." He posted about his ordeal on a local community board, desperately seeking any eyewitnesses who might have seen him at home the night of the break-in or known the actual culprit. Most people expressed sympathy, but no one had the smoking gun he needed. The tension became so great that, one afternoon, Zeke nearly lost his cool at work when a co-worker teased him about being Philly's most wanted. Jennifer quickly intervened, reminding him that she believed him, but the damage was done. Fear and anger were taking their toll on Zeke. Detective Reeves, perplexed that Connolly hadn't mentioned the new footage, did some digging. He found no official note about Mr. Ahmed's updated security video. Suspicious, Reeves confronted Connolly in the station hallway. "Sergeant, the first spoke with Mr. Ahmed. He said he personally delivered crucial footage. It might show the real perpetrator. Why haven't we followed up?" Connolly scowled. "I've been tied up. We already have enough to move forward with charges against Miller." Reeves's face tightened. "This footage apparently shows a man with a completely different build. We need to confirm that before we ruin someone's life." Connolly erupted. "Listen, rookie, you think you know better than me. I'm the one who's been working these streets for decades. Miller did it, or he was part of it. And that's it. I'll make the official call on whether we press charges." Reeves left the conversation more convinced than ever that Connolly had personal reasons, likely prejudice, or the desire for a quick resolution for targeting Zeke. That night, Reeves looked everywhere for the USB stick. He finally found it in Connolly's desk drawer, buried under a stack of old files. Waiting until Connolly left, Reeves took the footage home to review it thoroughly. What he saw confirmed his suspicions. The figure in the video was unequivocally not Zeke. Detective Reeves decided to approach Attorney Lansing directly. After some discreet inquiries, he found her office location and showed up one morning, carrying a laptop with the footage. "Miss Lansing," he said, introducing himself. "I'm Detective Ryan Reeves. There's something you need to see." Marjorie Lansing eyed him warily. "You realize Zeke's been harassed by your department for weeks now, Detective." Reeves nodded, guilt evident in his expression. "I'm aware, but I believe he's innocent." He played the video for her, a shaky night vision clip that showed the actual thief. Marjorie's eyes widened. "That's definitely not my client," she breathed. Reeves exhaled in relief, glad to have an ally outside the station. "Sergeant Connolly's been withholding it, intentionally or not, I'm not entirely sure. But I can guess. He's built this story around Zeke being guilty, and he doesn't want to let it go." Marjorie squared her shoulders. "Well, Connolly won't have a choice once we present this to the DA's office and the public." "Thank you, Detective. You did the right thing." With that, the tide began to turn. Marjorie immediately arranged a meeting with the Assistant District Attorney. She insisted on playing the footage and demanded that any attempt to formally charge Zeke be dropped. The ADA, initially skeptical, watched the video and recognized that the figure breaking into the pharmacy was not Zeke. Yet Connolly's accusations had already done enough damage to Zeke's reputation. Even if the charges never materialized, the dark cloud of suspicion lingered. Still, the evidence was a critical step toward clearing his name. But unknown to everyone else, more heartbreak was brewing. A man named Leonard "Lenny" Baxter, who occasionally worked as an informant for Connolly, knew the real culprit, his own cousin, Troy Baxter. Troy had been addicted to opioids after a back injury, turning to petty theft to support his habit. He'd break into pharmacies, hoping to score prescription painkillers. Lenny, aware of his cousin's crime spree, had tipped off Connolly in the past for smaller offenses, no convictions, just enough arrests to keep Troy on edge. When Connolly realized the pharmacy break-ins were growing more frequent, he pressured Lenny for a name. But Lenny, protective of his cousin, refused to snitch this time. Instead, he threw Zeke's name into the ring as a possible suspect, someone Lenny had never met but had heard was in the area. Maybe he just needed Connolly off Troy's trail, or maybe he had bigger plans. Regardless, the lie was enough to ignite Connolly's frenzy. In a twisted betrayal, Lenny told Troy that they had pinned everything on a black man from the neighborhood, someone Connolly was determined to nail. Believing he was in the clear, Troy kept robbing pharmacies, stoking the blaze of suspicion around Zeke. Eventually, Lenny's guilt ate at him. As Troy's thefts continued, Lenny realized the precarious nature of their deception. Sergeant Connolly was so fixated on Zeke that he might never catch Troy, but if Troy slipped up, Lenny would face consequences as well. One night, after news broke that the police had found exonerating footage of the real suspect, Lenny confronted his cousin. "Troy, this isn't going away. They've got new security footage. We're both in hot water if you don't come clean." Troy, sweating, eyes darting around, refused. "Not a chance. I'm not going to jail. Then that poor guy's life is ruined," Lenny snapped. "He's done nothing. Connolly's still chasing him." Troy shrugged, fear glinting in his eyes. "Better him than me." The next day, Lenny mustered the courage to leave an anonymous tip on the city's crime hotline. He hinted that an individual named Troy Baxter was linked to the pharmacy break-ins. He provided approximate addresses, descriptions, even details about Troy's limp from an old injury. The tip landed on Detective Reeves's desk, someone who had finally realized Zeke's innocence. Reeves recognized the limp from the hidden camera footage. This was the break they needed. Reeves tracked Troy down, cornering him in a dingy alley behind an abandoned diner. The stench of rotting food and stale beer hovered in the oppressive summer heat. Troy tried to run, but his limp slowed him enough for Reeves to tackle him. In his backpack, they found stolen bottles of painkillers from another recent pharmacy theft. Troy found himself in the same cramped interrogation room that Zeke had once occupied. Reeves sat across from him, arms folded. "We have footage of you breaking into pharmacies. We have eyewitness accounts. There's no denying it now." With nowhere left to hide, Troy slumped in defeat. "Fine," he muttered. "I was just trying to get pills for my back pain. Couldn't afford the real ones. Then I started selling them. It got out of hand." Reeves leaned forward. Sergeant Connolly was convinced it was a man named Ezekiel Miller. "You let him take the fall." Troy's eyes darted away. "I never told him to arrest that guy." That was Lenny. He gave them the name. Why? Because Connolly kept threatening Lenny for not coughing up a suspect. Lenny panicked, gave up someone else, anyone else. Reeves felt his stomach churn with anger. "You and your cousin just about destroyed an innocent man's life." Troy lowered his head, face contorted by shame or perhaps just fear of prison. "Yeah, look, I'm sorry. I'll sign a statement." Whatever. And so, with that confession on record, the truth behind the spree of pharmacy break-ins was laid bare. Word of Troy Baxter's confession rocked the precinct. Zeke's innocence was now undeniable. The evidence that had pointed to him had been little more than baseless speculation and a forced narrative. Detective Reeves brought the confession and the hidden camera footage straight to the district attorney. who quickly issued a statement officially clearing Zeke of any suspicion. At the same time, an internal affairs investigation was launched against Sergeant Harold Connolly for mishandling evidence and ignoring leads that contradicted his prime suspect. Connolly was suspended, pending further review. Some whispered that he might be looking at demotion or even outright dismissal from the force. Others felt it was high time he faced consequences for his aggressive, biased policing. Zeke Miller's name was all over the local news, but now as a man proven innocent. Headlines on NBC 10 Philadelphia read, "Wrongly accused local man exonerated, real culprit confesses." People who had once cast suspicious glances at Zeke now offered apologies or simply avoided eye contact. There was a certain satisfaction in seeing justice prevail, but for Zeke, the relief was tangled with bitterness over how easily a man in power could upend his life. Zeke sat in Marjorie Lansing's office, tears welling in his eyes, half relief and half anger. Nina was there too, her hand resting on his shoulder. Marjorie met Zeke's gaze. "We're filing a civil lawsuit against the city and Sergeant Connolly for wrongful detention and emotional distress. You lost wages, your reputation suffered, and the trauma of this ordeal, well, it's inexcusable." Zeke nodded shakily. "It's not really about the money. I just want Connolly held accountable." Nina squeezed his hand. "You deserve justice, Zeke. Everyone who's ever been targeted like that deserves it." Marjorie offered a supportive smile. "We'll move forward. In the meantime, you're free of suspicion. That's what truly matters. Let's make sure something like this never happens again." Zeke's exoneration echoed across the neighborhood. He received messages of solidarity from people in West Philly, neighbors, co-workers, even strangers who resonated with his plight. A local radio station interviewed him about his experience, shining a light on systemic issues of racial profiling. In the interview, Zeke fought back tears, recalling how powerless he felt. "It shouldn't happen to anyone," he said into the microphone. Being innocent meant nothing until someone in power decided to believe it. The host nodded grimly. "That's why stories like yours are so important. It forces us to confront how easily prejudice can override truth." Back at the Tesla Center, Zeke's boss gave him a heartfelt apology for not doing more sooner. "We'll cover the shifts you missed, and if you need time off to handle the legal stuff, we understand," he said. Colleagues pitched in for a small fundraiser, helping Zeke pay some of his mother's medical bills. It was a reminder that for every Connolly in the world, there were good people willing to stand up for what was right. Sergeant Connolly's fall from grace was swift. His arrogance and willingness to manipulate evidence led the police commissioner to issue a public apology to Zeke Miller. The entire department's credibility took a hit, fueling calls for deeper reforms and more oversight. Connolly found himself confronted by internal affairs, forced to explain why he had hidden crucial footage and how he had built a case on nothing but personal bias and a false tip. The day Connolly was officially terminated, cameras flashed outside the station. Reporters asked him if he regretted accusing an innocent man. He stared into the lenses, face sullen, eyes dull. "I was just doing my job," he muttered, before brushing past them. The public reaction was scathing, with many calling for criminal charges against him. While that remained uncertain, his career in law enforcement was ruined. The only job offers he might hope to get now would be security guard gigs, if that. A few weeks later, Zeke met Detective Reeves in a local diner for a cup of coffee. The detective wanted to personally apologize for everything Zeke had gone through. In that booth, amid the hum of chatter and the aroma of frying bacon, Reeves offered a sincere admission of guilt. "I should have pushed harder when Connolly ignored the evidence," he said, eyes downcast. "I'm sorry you had to suffer because I didn't speak up sooner." Zeke's expression was gentle but weary. "You did the right thing in the end," he responded quietly. "I can't say I forgive you for everything, but I'm grateful you found the truth." They clinked coffee mugs in an unspoken truce. A few months ago, they had been on opposite sides, but now they were bound by an understanding of how important truth and justice truly were. Troy Baxter pleaded guilty to multiple counts of burglary and possession of stolen pharmaceuticals. Before the judge, he confessed to everything, referencing how his addiction spiraled after he was laid off from his construction job. While the court showed some sympathy, pointing him toward rehabilitation, Troy still faced a prison sentence. He wrote a letter of apology to Zeke, which was delivered through Marjorie Lansing. In it, Troy wrote, "I know this doesn't fix what you went through, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I never meant for an innocent man to get dragged into my mistakes, but my fear of going to jail was stronger than my sense of right and wrong. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." Zeke read the letter alone in his apartment, the city lights twinkling through the curtains. He was conflicted. Part of him wanted to tear it up in rage, but another part recognized that Troy, too, was a victim of a system that had failed him in many ways. Ultimately, Zeke put it away in a drawer, deciding not to respond. Maybe he would one day, but not yet. Months passed. Marjorie Lansing fought fiercely for Zeke in court, and the city settled the lawsuit. Zeke received a monetary compensation that helped him finally pay off his mother's hospital bills. He even saved enough to move into a slightly better apartment closer to his job. Though money could not erase the emotional scars, it provided some stability and a measure of vindication. On a crisp autumn day, Zeke and Nina walked through Philadelphia's iconic Reading Terminal Market, sampling soft pretzels and fresh produce. Nina was beaming as she shared that she'd soon pass the bar exam, planning to become a full-fledged attorney. Zeke congratulated her with genuine happiness. Their bond, strengthened by the turmoil they had navigated together, felt unbreakable. "So, what's next for you?" Nina asked, sipping an iced tea. "Going to stay at Tesla?" "For now," Zeke said with a small laugh, "but I've been saving up for an advanced electrician course. Eventually, I'd love to start my own contracting business." "That's awesome," Nina said, playfully bumping his shoulder. "I'll help you set up the legal paperwork when the time comes." Amid the bustle of the market, with laughter and casual chatter all around, Zeke felt the warmth of hope returning. He was a survivor, someone who'd stared into the abyss of injustice and come out the other side. The fear and anger would always be part of him, but so would resilience. The ordeal left a lasting mark on the city's consciousness. Connolly's downfall sparked debates on racial profiling and the urgent need for checks and balances in law enforcement. Community leaders organized forums to discuss police accountability, and the Philadelphia Police Department pledged to implement better training programs. People who had never met Zeke personally drew inspiration from his story, an example of how the system can fail, but also how determined individuals can force it to do the right thing in the end. Some critics complained that the media coverage turned Zeke's suffering into a spectacle, but in many ways, it was a cautionary tale that could push society to address the deep-seated issues that allowed an innocent man to be so easily targeted. For Zeke, the greatest lesson was the importance of perseverance and community. Without Nina, Marjorie Lansing, Detective Reeves, and countless friends, co-workers, and neighbors offering support, he might still be under suspicion. Alone, he would have been crushed by a relentless system, but together they forged a path to truth. Nearly a year had passed since that fateful morning when Sergeant Connolly first approached Zeke. The seasons had cycled through scorching summers and snowy winters, and now a gentle spring breeze flowed through the city. Zeke found himself once more in that Starbucks he had hesitated to enter on the morning of his arrest. This time, he treated himself to a cappuccino, no longer worried about pinching every penny. He sat in a corner, gazing out the window at pedestrians on the busy street. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother, who had just finished her final round of physical therapy and was feeling stronger than she had in years. "Thank you, son, for everything. Love you so much." Zeke's lips curled into a soft smile. A memory flashed of that interrogation room, the bright fluorescent lights, Connolly's voice, the fear drumming in his chest. Now, that fear had mostly dissolved, replaced by the certainty that he had survived. In his heart, he knew the importance of sharing his story, of calling for accountability, so that others might not suffer the same fate. On the table beside him lay a worn notebook in which he'd scribbled new goals, starting his own business, supporting his mother, and possibly mentoring at-risk youth who might face the same prejudice he had endured. Because if anything good was to come out of his ordeal, it would be to prevent another innocent person from walking in his shoes. He sipped his cappuccino, letting the mild sweetness wash away the bitterness of the past. Outside, a police cruiser drove by without so much as a glance in his direction, and for the first time in a very long while, Ezekiel Miller felt an unburdened sense of possibility. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this dramatic story of injustice, courage, and redemption. Ezekiel Miller's journey reminds us that sometimes the people meant to protect us can become our biggest threat, but that truth, once found, always finds its voice. If you felt the intensity of Zeke's struggle, if you felt your heart pound with every twist and turn, please consider helping us reach more people with stories like this. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue shining a light on the battles for justice that happen every single day. Comment below with your thoughts, and let us know if you've ever witnessed or experienced a similar struggle for truth. Your engagement helps us build a community where awareness grows and positive change becomes possible. Thank you again, and stay tuned for more stories that inspire, enlighten, and keep us hoping for a better tomorrow.